In October 1979, Zenith executive Jerry Perlman paid $64.5 million for Heathkit, and he used the deal to close your right to fix what you own. The Michigan firm had spent 32 years shipping wooden kit boxes and assembly manuals to customers who built and repaired their own electronics. Heathkit, the brand, closed in 1992, but the soldering iron and the right it represented never did. Perlman came for three things: the engineering team, the storefronts, and 3 million catalog customers. Your right to repair was not overlooked. It was excluded because customers who can fix their own devices do not pay for service. 13 years after the deal closed, Zenith shut the kit division down. In that window, the computer business assembled from Heath's engineers billed $1.4 billion in a single year. This is the story of that trade, who made it, and why you are still paying for it. To understand what Zenith bought in 1979, you have to understand what Heathkit had become by then. The company started in 1947 with a single product, a working oscilloscope sold as an unassembled kit for $39.50. A factory-built oscilloscope from Tektronix cost several $100s. A laboratory model cost several thousand. Heathkit sold theirs for $39.50, and the only condition was the buyer had to build it himself. The kit sold out. Then it sold out again. What made the company different from anything else in American retail was the instruction manual. It was not an assembly guide. It was a course in electronics. Every manual included pictorial diagrams showing the exact position of every component on the chassis. Each step explained why specific parts had been chosen, what they did inside the circuit, and how to test them if something went wrong. The manuals were written on the assumption that the customer had never touched a soldering iron. By the time the build was complete, that assumption would no longer be true. A customer who built a Heathkit oscilloscope in 1950 did not simply end up with an oscilloscope. He ended up understanding how one worked. That distinction is the entire story. Heathkit backed the manuals with a guarantee that most companies in the 1950s and the 1960s would not have offered. If a customer followed the instructions step by step and the device did not work, Heathkit would fix it for free. The guarantee was not marketing language. It was a signal about the quality of the documentation. The manuals were field tested at the factory before going to print, with assembly technicians who had no prior knowledge of the specific product walking through every step to confirm they worked as written. By 1954, the company was doing $10 million a year. By 1976, revenue hit $90 million. By 1977, the catalog listed 288 products, including oscilloscopes, color televisions, ham radio transceivers, weather stations, and personal computers. Nearly 100,000 oscilloscope kits had been sold by the mid-1950s alone. The ham radio SB101 transceiver sold in the tens of thousands. Building one required more than 100 hours of careful work. When operators made their first radio contact on equipment, they had assembled themselves. Most of them remembered the moment for the rest of their lives. By 1977, this was the largest self-funded technical education program in the United States, not a university, not a government agency, but a catalog company from Benton Harbor, Michigan, mailing instruction manuals to people who wanted to understand what they owned. The standard account of Heathkit's decline names 3 causes. Surface mount technology made kit assembly physically impractical because the components were too small to hand solder. Mass production drove pre-built electronics below kit prices. The market moved on. Each of those things is true. None of them is the reason the kit business closed. Surface mount components became dominant through the 1980s, but they did not arrive overnight, and they did not prevent kit building from existing in a different form. Other manufacturers adapted by redesigning assembly formats, using through whole variants of critical components where hand assembly remained practical, or building curriculum around new technologies rather than abandoning the kit model entirely. The question is not whether surface mount technology made the old kit format harder. It did. The question is whether anyone at Heathkit tried to solve that problem, and the answer is that by the time the problem arrived, the people who might have solved it were no longer working on kits. The engineering team that had designed Heathkit's most complex products had been redirected to ZDS within 2 years of the acquisition. There was no one left with both the knowledge of the kit format and the authority to invest in adapting it. Price compression is also real. By the early 1980s, a department store stereo receiver cost less than a comparable kit. But Heathkit had survived price competition before by offering something pre-built units could not: the knowledge of how the machine worked. That value proposition required sustained investment to maintain, in updated manuals, in new product categories where kit buyers wanted to learn, and in marketing to the audience that was willing to pay more for understanding than for convenience. None of that investment happened after 1979. The perverse incentive runs in the other direction. The education model Heathkit had built for 30 years was directly incompatible with what Zenith needed from the computer market. A customer who understood how to build and repair their own computer equipment was a customer who did not need to buy a new computer when the old one stopped working. A customer dependent on manufacturer service was a customer who paid twice, once for the machine, once for access to the people who understood it. Zenith did not need to destroy Heathkit's model deliberately. They simply needed to stop investing in it. The model would decline on its own schedule. Zenith Electronics completed the purchase of the Heath Company in October 1979 for $64.5 million. The seller was Schlumberger, the oilfield services company that had acquired Heath a few years earlier and had no coherent plan for operating an electronics education business. When Zenith made its offer, Schlumberger accepted. Jerry Perlman had been pushing for a move into computers since 1978, when he led a restructuring of Zenith along product lines, with each division charged to find new markets. The consumer television business was under mounting pressure from Japanese manufacturers delivering better picture quality at lower prices, and Perlman understood that television was a contest Zenith was losing on its current trajectory. He wanted a second business with a credible growth path. The Heath acquisition was his answer. He told the board that Heath gave Zenith 3 things that would otherwise take years to build: a proven computer engineering team, a national retail footprint of more than 70 storefronts, and a catalog customer base of roughly 3 million people who had demonstrated a willingness to buy electronics through the mail. He was right about all 3. What he did not describe as part of the value proposition was the instruction manual business, the decades of educational infrastructure Heathkit had built around the premise that customers should understand what they owned. That part of the company was not mentioned as an asset. In 70 American cities, there had been a Heathkit store where a customer could walk in, pick up an unbuilt chassis, and ask the person behind the counter what gauge wire to use on a particular connection. The staff at those stores had built the products themselves. They could answer the question because they had done the work. Those stores kept operating after 1979. They just stopped getting new kits. Zenith renamed the computer operation Zenith Data Systems within 2 years. The kit catalog continued under the Heathkit name, but received no meaningful development investment. The engineering talent that had designed the H8 and H89 personal computer kits, among the most capable home computer kits available at the time, moved to Zenith Data Systems and began developing machines for corporate and government buyers. The kit development pipeline, the process by which Heathkit had brought new products to the catalog every year for 3 decades, stopped. The kit customer, the one who had been buying instruction manuals for 30 years, was not part of the plan going forward. The catalog tells the story more clearly than any press release. The products that disappeared first were the ones requiring the most sustained engineering support. The complex builds with elaborate instruction manuals, the kind that taught customers a technical discipline across 60 or 100 hours of assembly, vanished from the catalog before the simpler module kits did. A catalog that had listed 288 of those builds in 1977 had shrunk to 221 by 1987. By 1990, the count was below 100. In 1992, Zenith announced that the Heathkit electronic kit business was being discontinued. What was left by then was components and simple modules, a catalog stripped of the curriculum-based builds that had defined the brand for 3 decades. That same year, the kit business closed. Zenith Data Systems was awarded the Desktop 4 contract, a government deal worth up to $740 million, covering computers and equipment for the Air Force, the Army, the Navy, and civilian federal agencies. The award followed the IRS deal from 1986, in which Zenith supplied roughly 18,000 laptops to field agents for $27 million. By 1992, the federal government was ZDS's largest customer by revenue. The kit business was generating less than $10 million annually when it closed. The computer business was approaching $1 billion. That timeline puts a hole in the surface mount argument. Surface mount made the old kit format harder, but it did not make documentation impossible. In 1992, Apple was selling the Macintosh LC2, built with the same small components, shipped with technical reference documentation, and it was not sealed against the user who wanted to open it. The technology did not prevent documentation. The decision not to document was a choice Zenith made. The choice was not made once. It was made continuously, across 13 years, in every budget cycle where the kit division's requests were subordinated to ZDS priorities. By the time the formal announcement came in 1992, the kit business had been in steady decline for over a decade. The announcement was administrative confirmation of a decision that had been made in practice years earlier. Heathkit did not die because the market moved on. It died because the people who owned it needed it to stop competing with a different kind of customer relationship, one where the buyer pays for access rather than understanding. Here is what the $64.5 million bought, measured in outcomes. At the time of the acquisition, the computer operation that would become Zenith Data Systems represented roughly 1.4% of Zenith's total revenue. Within 5 years, that share had grown to 15%. By 1988, it was pulling in $1.4 billion a year, a dramatic growth. The entire Heathkit company at its peak, kits, instruction manuals, storefronts, catalog, 30 years of customer relationships, had generated $90 million in 1976. That number, the best Heathkit ever achieved in its history, was less than 7% of what the computer division made in a single year at its height. The computer division assembled from Heath's engineers had outgrown the original company by a factor of 15. The acquisition paid for itself many times over before the kit catalog was formally discontinued. This was an unmistakable outgrowth. By the mid-1980s, beige Zenith boxes sat on desks at IRS field offices and military installations, built by the same engineers who had once designed a kit computer a hobbyist could assemble on a kitchen table. The laptop computers that IRS field agents carried into audits were designed and built by people who had spent years at Heathkit writing instructions clear enough for a non-technical customer to assemble a working computer from scratch. Those same engineers were now writing specifications for machines the government would buy by the tens of thousands and never expect any buyer to open. The shift in engineers was complete. What Zenith Data Systems sold was not complicated. IBM-compatible personal computers, manufactured in the United States and sold primarily to government and corporate buyers who needed machines they could not build themselves and would not try to repair. Federal procurement rules at the time gave American-made equipment a real advantage for defense and government contracts. ZDS was positioned to take that business, and did. By the late 1980s, ZDS had become one of the largest suppliers of computers to the Department of Defense and civilian federal agencies. The focus was government. The engineering team that had designed Heathkit's H-89 personal computer the machine that let customers build their own fully functional computer for less than the cost of a factory-built equivalent, was now designing machines for the Air Force. The customer who once received an instruction manual in the mail had been replaced by a procurement officer who received a contract. The era of DIY customers gave way to institutional procurement. Here is what the trade actually looked like. On one side, a business generating $10 million a year by teaching customers to understand and repair their own equipment. It produced customers who needed fewer repairs and were less dependent on the manufacturer over time. The better a Heathkit customer became at building and diagnosing electronics, the less they needed the company that sold them the kit. That is not a viable long-term revenue model for a manufacturer who wants recurring income. On the other side, a business generating $1.4 billion a year by selling machines to buyers, primarily the federal government, who could not and would not service their own equipment, who required maintenance contracts, upgrade cycles, and dedicated support relationships with the manufacturer. Every installation created downstream revenue. The more machines Zenith Data Systems placed, the more service calls, replacements, and upgrade cycles followed. The kit model and the pre-built model are not just different products. They are structurally incompatible customer relationships. In the kit model, the manufacturer's value is delivered at the point of sale, and the customer becomes increasingly self-sufficient over time. In the pre-built model, the manufacturer's value is delivered continuously through service and replacement, and the customer becomes increasingly dependent. The incompatibility is not accidental. A kit customer who has spent 100 hours building a ham radio transceiver knows exactly which components fail under which conditions, where to order replacements, and how to install them. That customer is valuable to Heathkit once, at the point of sale. A government agency that has deployed 5,000 identical workstations across 30 states is valuable to Zenith Data Systems indefinitely, for every repair call, every software cycle, every hardware refresh, every component failure that the agency staff cannot diagnose without calling the manufacturer. The dependency is not a side effect of the model. It is the model. Zenith did not articulate this trade in public. No executive at Zenith said they were closing the kit business because educated customers were bad for revenue. They said the market had changed, that surface mount technology had made kit building impractical. The catalog just got thinner every year until there was nothing left. If you have watched this far and you have not subscribed, this is the kind of mechanism this channel covers, not the headline, not the bankruptcy announcement, but the arithmetic that ran 12 years before the announcement. Subscribe so you do not miss the next one. The Zenith decision did not stay in Michigan. Zenith sold Zenith Data Systems to the French technology company Bull SA in 1989. The kit model was already dead by then. What survived the sale was the template. The template works like this. Sell the machine at a competitive price, then capture the service revenue for the life of the product by ensuring the buyer cannot service it without authorization. When Heath existed, this model faced a transparent competitive threat. A company offering instruction manuals offered independence from the manufacturer. Remove the instruction manuals, and the threat disappears with them. In the 1980s, the tools for enforcing service dependency were primarily contractual, proprietary parts, authorized service networks, and warranty terms that voided on unauthorized repair. By the 2000s, software gave manufacturers a more precise instrument. If you take a cracked iPhone to an independent repair shop for a new screen, Face ID will often stop working after the replacement. It is not that the new screen is physically incompatible. It fits. The problem is that Apple software checks whether the replacement part has been authorized by their system and can disable facial recognition if the check fails. A technician with the right tools can swap the screen in under an hour. The phone powers back on. The screen is fine. Face ID is not. The problem came from the software, not the repair. Apple has extended this parts pairing system across multiple components in recent device generations, which means independent repair shops cannot guarantee full device functionality after a repair, even when the physical work is done correctly. A farmer who spends several $100,000 on a John Deere combine cannot legally access the diagnostic software needed to fix the computer inside his own equipment. Federal copyright law treats the software as protected code, which means bypassing the access controls to run your own diagnostic is a legal violation, even though you own the machine. John Deere has defended the arrangement as protection for its intellectual property. What that means in practice is that a broken sensor on a machine the farmer bought requires a licensed Deere dealer to fix, at dealer prices, on the dealer schedule, including during harvest. In hospitals, biomedical engineers responsible for maintaining ventilators and imaging systems have encountered the same wall. Repair attempts by technicians without manufacturer authorization can trigger software locks that disable diagnostic functions until a factory-certified representative clears the device. The engineer who maintains the machine cannot fix the machine. This is not three separate stories. It is one architecture applied to three industries. Sell the machine, lock the maintenance, capture the service revenue for the life of the product. Jerry Perlman did not invent this model. He proved it worked at scale in a market large enough for other industries to notice. Jerry Perlman became chairman and president of Zenith Electronics. In 1995, he oversaw the sale of the company to LG Electronics of South Korea for $350 million. Zenith had paid $64.5 million for the Heath company to get into the computer business. 16 years later, Zenith itself was sold. The computer division it had built was already in French hands by then, transferred to Bull SA 6 years before the LG deal closed. The company that had outbid every American competitor in color television manufacturing ended its run as an asset in someone else's transaction, at a price that reflected how much the industry had changed. The $64.5 million decision outlasted the company that made it, which is not unusual for decisions that restructure how customers relate to their own equipment. The last Heathkit catalog shipped in 1992. The last kit a customer could order was a shortwave radio receiver, the same category of equipment Heathkit had been selling since 1947. If someone ordered it, built it, and still has it, they own something no manufacturer today will sell them, a machine they understand completely, that they can diagnose, repair, and modify without asking permission from anyone. There was a period lasting roughly 4 decades, from the late 1940s through the early 1980s, when the assumption that a buyer had the right to understand and service what they owned was embedded in how American manufacturers designed and documented their products. Service manuals were included with equipment or available for purchase. Repair shops could source parts through normal channels. A technically capable customer was considered a good customer. That assumption did not disappear overnight. It eroded incrementally, one product line at a time, one acquisition at a time, as the arithmetic of service dependency proved more reliable than the arithmetic of customer education. The right to repair movement has introduced legislation in more than 30 states and passed federal rules on specific product categories. The argument the movement is making, that a person who buys a machine should be allowed to fix it, was not a political argument in 1947. It was the operating assumption of every company that sold you equipment. Heathkit's entire business model was built on that assumption. The decision to dismantle it was made in a boardroom in Glenview, Illinois, in October 1979, by a man running a straightforward piece of arithmetic. The same arithmetic is now being run in a John Deere legal filing in a federal court in Illinois. That mechanism is next.